You were born from an oak tree that had been standing for 80 years. Not a remarkable tree, not an ancient one, just a tree that had grown slowly and quietly in a forest in Northern Ireland, adding one ring per year, indifferent to the world around it. It did not know what it would become. It did not know about the ship. It did not know about the ocean. Neither did you. You were cut, dried, shaped, and carved. The men who worked you were craftsmen, skilled hands, careful tools, long hours in the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast. They were building the largest moving object ever constructed by human hands, and they were proud of it. Every panel, every beam, every carved detail was made with the confidence of people who believed they were building something permanent. You were decorative, an oak wood panel, carved, lacquered, elegant, part of the first-class interior. You were not structural, you were not essential, you were beautiful. And in 1912, beauty on a ship like this meant something. It meant money, it meant status. It meant that the people who sailed on you had arrived. You weighed approximately 150 kilograms. You measured roughly 2.4 meters by 1.2 meters. You were large enough, more than large enough, for two people to lie across without either of them touching the water. You did not know this yet. You were just wood, just craft, just the slow, patient transformation of a living thing into something that would outlast everything around it. RMS Titanic launched on April 10, 1912. You were inside her, fixed to a wall in the first-class dining saloon, part of the elaborate carved paneling that lined the grandest room on the grandest ship in the world. You had spent months in the shipyard. You had heard the sounds of construction, hammers, machinery, the shouts of 10,000 men. You had felt the vibration of the engines when they first turned over. And then, the ocean. For 4 days you felt it. The slow, deep movement of a ship crossing the North Atlantic, the vibration of engines, the sounds of people, laughter, conversation, the clink of crystal and silver in the dining room where the wealthiest people in the world ate meals that cost more than a worker's monthly wage. They were comfortable, they were confident, they were on the safest ship ever built, or so they had been told. You felt none of their confidence and none of their fear. You were wood. You were fixed. You were part of the architecture of certainty that the ship's designers had built into every surface. But the ocean did not care about certainty. The ocean never does. Section 3. April 14th, the last normal hour. 3 to 4:30 p.m. 11:40 p.m. April 14th, 1912. The iceberg took 10 seconds to tear a 90-meter gash along the starboard side of the hull. 10 seconds. The ship had been traveling at 22 knots. The lookouts had seen it too late. The officers had turned too late. In those 10 seconds, everything changed. The sounds you heard that night were different from the nights before. First, the distant grinding, metal against ice, somewhere far below. Then the ship slowing. Then silence, which was worse than any sound because you had grown accustomed to the constant vibration of the engines, and now it was gone. Then the angles began. Slowly at first, barely perceptible, the kind of tilt you might dismiss as the natural movement of a ship at sea. But it did not correct itself. It continued. And the sounds that followed, water moving where water should not be, the creak of metal under pressure, the distant shouts of crew members who understood what the passengers did not yet, told you something that wood does not need words to understand. The ship was dying. And in dying, it would set you free. You came free sometime after midnight. The exact moment is lost in the chaos of a ship breaking apart, in the noise of 1,500 people understanding simultaneously that there were not enough lifeboats, in the cold that was already killing people in the water before the ship had even finished sinking. The North Atlantic that night was -2 degrees Celsius. Water that cold kills a human being in 15 to 45 minutes, depending on their size, their movement, their luck. The people in the water knew this, some of them, the ones who had studied survival, the ones who had read about cold water, the ones who understood that floating was not the same as surviving. You floated. Of course you floated. You were wood, sealed with lacquer. 150 kilograms of buoyant wood in an ocean that wanted to take everything down. And Rose DeWitt Kubacher found you. She pulled herself onto you, completely, her entire body out of the water, and she lived. Because of this, because of the simple physics of wood and water, because of the 80-year-old tree in Northern Ireland that had no idea what it was growing toward. Jack Dawson found you too. He tried. Here is what the argument misses. The people who debate this, and they have been debating it for over 100 years in classrooms and internet forums and scientific papers, focus on the wrong question. They ask, could two people fit on you? Yes. Physically, mathematically, scientifically, yes. A 2023 study by researchers using a replica of your exact dimensions confirmed it. Two people, both out of the water, both with a chance. But that is not what happened. What happened was this. Rose was already on you when Jack reached you. She was already out of the water. She was already alive. And Jack, exhausted, freezing, operating on instinct in the dark, tried to pull himself up and felt you tilt, felt the edge go under, felt Rose start to slide. And he let go. He made a calculation in the dark, in the cold, in the chaos with a mind that was already shutting down from hypothermia. He decided, without deciding, the way people make decisions when they are dying, that her life was worth the attempt to survive. He slipped back into the water. He held the edge of you with his hands. He talked to her. He told her she would survive. He told her she would have children and grandchildren and grow old. He told her that her life would go on. And then, at 2:20 a.m., the cold finished what the ocean had started. You held one. You had room for two. The Carpathia arrived at 4:10 a.m. By then, the Titanic had been on the ocean floor for nearly 2 hours. 1,517 people had died. 710 had survived. The mathematics of lifeboats and class and luck sorted the living from the dead in ways that would be studied and argued about for generations. Rose survived. She lived to be 101 years old in the film, and in the real history that inspired it, the women who survived that night often carried it quietly, in the particular way that survivors carry the weight of being the ones who lived. You drifted, for hours, maybe days. The North Atlantic does not release things quickly. You floated on the surface of an ocean that held 1,500 bodies in its depths, moving slowly with the current, indifferent to what you carried and what you had failed to carry. Eventually, you were found. Not immediately, not dramatically, just found, the way debris is found, cataloged, collected, stored. And then, decades later, you became something else entirely. In 2023, the wooden panel that historians and film analysts had identified as the prop used in James Cameron's 1997 film, the door, the raft, the object at the center of 100 years of argument, was auctioned at RR Auction in Boston. It sold for $718,750. The man who bought it was James Cameron himself. He bought you back. The man who invented you, who designed you, who placed you in that freezing water, who made the decision about who would live and who would die on your surface, paid $718,750 to own the physical object that had carried that decision for 100 years. He has said in interviews that he believes Jack could have survived, that the scene was written as a choice, a deliberate sacrifice, not as a physical impossibility, that Jack chose to let go, that love, in Cameron's vision, looked like that, someone deciding that the other person's life was worth more than their attempt to survive. You don't know if that's true. You only know what you felt.
You felt 150 kilograms of buoyant wood floating on water cold enough to kill. You felt one person's weight, distributed across your surface, pressing you down but not under. You felt the mathematics of it, the way you sat in the water, the way your edges cleared the surface, the space that remained. The space that remained. You have thought about that space for 100 years, not with guilt. Wood does not feel guilt, but with the specific weight of an object that was present at a moment of impossible choice and knows in whatever ways objects know things that the choice was made. One person chose to let go. You carried one. You had room for two. But here is the thing that no argument, no scientific study, no auction price can change. The space was there. It was always there. And the person who might